Hey, hi, I'm Buttercup, animator, illustrator, sequential artist, author, and self-admitted lore-obsessed nerd. In the week since Elden Ring has come out, I've been wanting to know what's going on with the story. I've been watching a bunch of my friends play the game, and unfortunately I can't do it personally. The only console that I own is a Switch, and I'm a Mac cultist, I suppose, so I can't play the game on PC. So I've just been watching a lot of footage of this game and being like, what is going on? What is happening? And so I decided to put together a document that explains to the best of my ability what I think is happening in the game. Now, there are a few theories out there that I've seen that don't line up with my headcanon, so I'm not going to involve them in this video. I'm not going to mention them by name or the specifics. There's a lot of stuff that does constitute my headcanon that I'm just going to say without a lot of fanfare. So if you hear anything that is huh, what, excuse me, it's probably because either it is a part of my personal headcanon and may not be consistent with the in-game information, and if there's anything that happens to be just absolutely unquestionably refuted by the in-game text or dialogue, I'm more than happy to just be like, oh, I was wrong about that. So without further ado, Elden Ring lore. Preface. All of the below text is based on speculation gleaned from a few hours of watching playthroughs and walkthroughs of Elden Ring, and is entirely constituted of my opinion. However, it does absolutely constitute full story spoilers for Elden Ring. I don't have sources because the process of accumulating this knowledge was in no way rigorous, just my brain putting the pieces together as they emerged and amending things as they proved inconsistent with the in-game dialogue and item descriptions. Many characters are unreliable narrators, deceptive, use false or alternate names, and take on titles drastically different from their common ones, and therefore require induction or inductive reasoning to draw any meaningful connections. So that's the preface. Again, a lot of this is just put together through dialogue, character dialogue, or item descriptions that I've seen in YouTube videos of people playing the game. One of my big sources was TV tropes. Their Elden Ring section is, it's TV tropes. So it's really quippy. They've got a lot of nested trope references in there. And so a lot of the stuff that I'm saying on here, it's just my autistic ass brain just sort of putting everything together. Again, with even less further ado. Premise. The main premise that I'm working from is that all of the gods of the Erd Tree capital are actually timeless, giant cosmic stone dragons. Hold on. The main premise that I'm working from is that all of the gods of the Erd Tree capital are actually timeless, giant, cosmic stone dragons that can transform into humanoids and fuse body and soul with other beings and objects at will. Via access to dreamlands housed within their spirits and using supernatural abilities tied to their relationship to the elemental runes they possess, Marika and the demigods can also grant the beings and objects they fuse with, once separated, the ability to further fuse with other beings and objects. And here's a little bit of evidence of that. Marika fused with the Greater Will and therefore the Order of the World. Radagon fused with Rennala and Holy with Marika. Godwyn fused with ranni and in Death the Erd Tree. Godrick fused with various tarnished pilgrims to amass power. Miquella fused with the Halig Tree in an attempt to transform it, and in Death fused with mohg. Malenia fused with the fungal bloom / the concept of rot itself, as well as her gilded prosthetics. It says in game that she was cursed, and I will talk about that a little bit later. Ranni fused with Godwyn and projects her spirit into various puppets. Rykard allowed himself to be eaten by a serpent in order to fuse with it, and fused with the concept of blasphemy. Radagon appears to be unfused but is massive in stature and unmatched in gravitational sorcery. Morgott seems to be a half-transformed stone dragon who can make commoners into clones of himself, and Mohg, Morgott's twin, seems to be a half-transformed stone dragon who fused with Miquella's blood after he died. And then there's Melina, product of Godwyn and Ranni's fusion, fuses with the charred but reforged Elden Ring and destined death. I'll explain a little bit more, but let's get through the backstory for not the entire world, but for Marika's reign specifically. Marika and Godfrey. Marika is a vessel for the Greater Will and God Queen All-Mother of the Lands Between. It's possible that she ascended to the Lands Between from Noxtella City and formed the Erd Tree Network at some point in the Forgotten Past, accompanied by her dragonborn shape-shifting kin, Morgott, Mohg, and Radagon, but we don't know for certain. The Greater Will is maintained by the Elden Ring, a simultaneously ethereal and physical object held in Marika's possession, composed of runes that constitute the law of the world, setting the Lands Between apart from the stars. Before the age of the Erd Tree, Time was the Elden Lord, but fled when Marika became vassal of the Greater Will, and the Lands Between entered a literal and metaphorical Golden Age. Marika was without a consort until Godfrey, a human warrior, courted and wed her and became the first Elden Lord of the Golden Age. Marika fused with Godfrey and produced two children, Godwyn and Godrick. Very little is known about Godwyn, except that he was the beloved of Marika and presumed heir to the Erd Tree royal throne of Leyndell. Leyndell. I haven't said that word out loud before. Leyndell. Godrick was born weaker and grew to wretchedly crave the other demigod's power. It's notable here that it's likely Morgott and Mohg are Marika's kin and fellow shape-shifting stone dragons who have ineffectively attempted to take on an earthly form, and, afflicted by a recurring twin curse, are therefore given the title Omen. Rennala and Radagon. A faction of learned human sorcerers used knowledge of glintstone, a starborn element discovered deep underground, to cast spells, craft magical artifacts, manipulate meteoric alloys, and wield power over gravity, threatening the Golden Order. The sorcerers were led by Rennala Caria, the full moon sorceress and head of the school of Raya Lucaria. Radagon, Marika's champion, led a campaign against the sorcerers to claim Raya Lucaria for the Erd Tree, but Radagon regretted the offensive and subsequently courted Rennala. After Radagon bathed in celestial dew, Rennala fused with him and they produced three children, Ranni, Rykard, and Radahn. I don't know who's older or younger, it's just known that those are their three kids. Banishment of Godfrey. Godfrey fell out of Marika's good grace and likely became the first tarnished, a term used to describe those forsaken by Marika, and was banished to the lands beyond the fog. Godfrey was chased into the wilds and conquered them, soul fusing with his lion beast companion Sirash, and becoming Horalu, chieftain of the Badlands. Marika and Radagon. After Godfrey was banished, Radagon abandoned Rennala to return to Leyndell, leaving Rennala his red wolf as guardian and an amber egg holding his great rune of the Elden Ring as a symbol of his broken vow. Radagon then courted Marika and became the second Elden Lord. They fused entirely and produced two children as a single god, the twin prodigies Miquella and Malenia. Maliketh and the Death Rune. The start of the Golden Age/Order is marked by Marika the Eternal removing the Death Rune from the Elden Ring and entrusting it with her beast champion and chaplain of her imperial cult, Maliketh, in an attempt to render her reign everlasting and confine destined death. Maliketh's duty was to prevent death from touching the Lands Between at all cost. Ranni and Godwyn. Now this is my headcanon, I just want to get that out of the way. The following is purely speculation informed by the plot of the end game. I'm putting all these pieces together, don't know if it's the case or not, am happy to just be if there's any in-game evidence that this is just not true, be okay. But I feel FromSoft games tend to have a bit of additional mystery or something that is paradoxical or unexplained or is exclusively environmental storytelling, and I feel this is one of those things. So Ranni, who was very close to her mother Rennala, was taken aback by her parents' separation and horrified as she witnessed her mother quickly fall into despair and delusion, studying the art of reincarnation in hopes that she and Radagon might fuse again in the next life. However, Ranni and her siblings were adopted by Marika and were thus bestowed great runes, becoming shard bearers, and were welcomed into the capital city as members of the royal family. After a time, Ranni fell in love with Godwyn the Golden, her kin and stepbrother and heir to the Erdtree throne. They fused, producing a child, Melina. Godwyn refused to acknowledge the pregnancy, perhaps due to shame, and spurned Ranni, though they had already fused body and soul. Ranni, enraged and entirely rejected, grew so bereaved that she hatched a plot to cast the entire world in void and begin the Age of Stars. Ranni broke off a piece of the death rune, specifically one side of the crossguard of the Black Blade, and stole it from Maliketh, fusing it with the Fingerslayer blade, and contracted a group of assassins to use it to kill Godwyn. Before he was stabbed with the Fingerslayer blade, Godwyn's hand was severed and split in two, the 3 fingers of wrath and the 2 fingers of prophecy. Upon his death, because Godwyn and Ranni were already fused body and soul, Godwyn's soul died, but his body continued to live, and Ranni's body burned, but her spirit persisted. Melina, Ranni and Godwyn's offspring, and the child of all houses, Godfrey's, rennalas, radagons, and marikas, was stricken with a mark of death on her eye, resembling her father's 3 severed fingers of wrath, and the curse mark both her parents' bodies bear. Godwyn's body, still alive, was buried beneath the Erdtree and continued to grow into a primordial dragon, but his necrotic tissue spread across the land between through the Erdtree root network, causing a curse of death to plague the lands between. And Godwyn's face emerged beneath Stormveil Castle, mindlessly attempting to reconstitute itself. The breaking of the Elden Ring and the Shattering. After Godwyn's death, Marika became inconsolable and out of despair broke the Elden Ring, utterly fracturing reality, despite Radagon's attempt to repair it. With Marika showing no interest in restoring her Golden Order, Radagon martyred their shared body and confined them to the inside of the Erdtree. With their parents nowhere to be found, Marika and Radagon's children saw fit to compete amongst themselves for the Erdtree throne. The factions are as follows: Godrick, wretched occupier of Stormveil and his army of insane knights and mercenaries; Miquella of the Haligtree and his twin champion, Melina, goddess of rot; Radagon, general of Marika's armies, conqueror of the stars, defender of Caelid; Rykard, lord of blasphemy, serpentine praetor of the volcano Mount Gelmir; Ranni the witch, lunar princess, herald of the dark moon and the age of the stars; Morgott, the last king, defender of the Erdtree; Mohg, aspirant to a new eternal dynasty of truth and blood; Maliketh's Golden Order, tasked by the finger reader prophets to find the tarnished who will take the title of Elden Lord. That's a lot of factions. This truly is a germ creation. During the Shattering, the Great Civil War between the demigods, the largest battle for the Erdtree throne is said to have taken place at Mount Gelmir, but the most famous battle was between Malenia, Blade of Miquella, and Star-Scourge Radagon, wherein Malenia, goddess of rot, afflicted General Radagon with her rotted blood, destroying his mind, leaving him feral and forever wandering the rot-covered Caelid, still holding back the movement of the stars. The Shard Bearers fought to a stalemate, and due to their varying levels of cogency and ambition, remain so to present day. The 2 sides of Godwyn's severed hand began to grow until they became the objects of worship and fear, the 2 fingers and 3 fingers respectively, in the eyes of Maliketh's new cult of Marika, the Golden Order, dedicated to restoring the Elden Ring. Upon the breaking of the Elden Ring, the Tarnished, those banished by Marika to the lands beyond the fog, were once again able to return to the lands between, and the cult of the Golden Order read the 2 fingers and prophesied that one of the Tarnished would one day become champion and Queen Marika's next consort, restoring the Elden Ring. Miquella and Mohg. Miquella, cursed with eternal childhood, claimed his Empyrean title and stole away to the roots of the Haligtree in the land of the giants to try and establish a new order. While Malenia was away at the Battle of Caelid, Mohg, believing this to be the opportunity to establish his own dynasty, removed Miquella's sleeping body from the Haligtree roots and forcibly fused with him, believing this horrid union would awaken Miquella's full godhood, but instead it killed him. Mohg established his capital at Mohgwyn Palace high in the mountains, a short trek from Miquella's halig tree. Mohg believed that their union was the beginning of a great dynasty and defends Miquella's corpse with delirious fervor, believing their eventual offspring, Mohgwyn, will rule the lands between and make Miquella the mother of truth, but Mohg's certainty is utterly delusional. Malenia, Gowry, and Millicent. Weakened by the Battle of Caelid, Malenia put down her sword and settled in East Caelid with a sage named Gowry. They produced a child, Millicent. Before Millicent was born, Malenia... This doesn't really make sense. Before Millicent was born, Malenia abandoned Gowry. This presumes that Gowry gave birth to Millicent. So I'm just going to revise this really quick. Shortly after Malenia gave birth to Millicent, she abandoned Gowry in search of miquella, her twin and brother, and went to rest in Elfell at the base of the halig tree, awaiting his return. Millicent, unsure of her parentage, inherited her mother's scarlet rot and deeply internalized her own sense of disgust about her decaying body. Gowry gave Millicent Malenia's golden needle as a keepsake, and she wedged it into her flesh in hopes of stopping the rot from spreading. Millicent's father believed the golden needle would cause Millicent to bloom like her mother, but she was so disgusted by her flesh that she removed it and wholly embraced decay, though not without asking the needle be returned to Malenia, who she divined she shared kinship with. Godrick. Godrick, obsessed with his relative weakness compared to the other demigods, decided to use his ability to fuse for the purpose of amassing power, and started a cult that demanded all returning tarnished give their limbs to him in tribute. His uncle Morgott sent a clone of himself to Stormvale to prevent any tarnished from reaching Godrick, knowing him to be the weakest demigod, for fear of the Golden Order's prophecy. Morgott. As Marika's kin, Morgott has the clearest claim to Leyndell's throne, and thus defends the Erdtree trunk against anyone attempting to reach its inner sanctum, calling himself Last of All Kings. Ranni and Rennala. Unbound from her body, Ranni has many vessels made for her spirit to inhabit, using them to establish her own royal council and to watch over both her mother, Rennala, and the secret behind Godwyn's assassination. One such vessel is the Dark Moon Ring, housed within the Grand Library at Raya Lucaria. When Rennala, obsessed and secluded, is threatened, Ranni, through the ring, casts the attacker into her dream world memory of her mother at the peak of her skill in glintstone sorcery, and forces them to fight the Full Moon Witch rather than her reincarnation-obsessed present-day self. Ranni's avatars are scattered across the lands between, but because she must rest for long stints in order to animate them, they are hardly active. One of her abandoned and unanimated puppets is located in the eternal city of Noxtella, at the far end of Caelid, and is unreachable because of the lake of rot Malenia left after her battle with Radagon. There, Ranni communed with Estelle, natural born of the void, and was able to finalize her plan to kill the Two Fingers, finishing her fratricidal mission, and cast the lands between into the void itself, initiating the astral millennium. After Radagon is killed by the prophesied Tarnished, a meteor shower he was holding at bay crashes into East Limgrave, opening a path to Noxtella. After killing the Two Fingers, which was Ranni's plot all along to finish the job of killing Godwyn, Ranni's puppet also dies, but when reunited with the Dark Moon Ring, she is able to permanently inhabit the body of the puppet and enact her plan to cast the world into void. Fia and the Prince of Death. Fia, one of the living dead and deathbed companion, she's also tarnished, I don't think that I mentioned that, is secretly in love with Godwyn and wishes to unite with his living corpse to produce a rune child using the death rune shared in his body. The death rune shard in his body. Once she is able to dispatch the threat of the hunters of those who live in death and betray the Golden Order, she takes Ranni's she betrays the round table. I can't remember what they're called. With the group of people, it's the Golden Order's tarnished assassin camp or whatever, but she betrays them and takes Ranni's death rune fragment and sleeps beside the corpse of Godwyn at the base of the Erdtree, fusing with him in the Dreamlands and awakening Godwyn's stone dragon form, Lich Dragon Fortisax. This union results in the mending of Ranni and Godwyn's death rune fragments, giving birth to the mending rune of the Death Prince, providing the chance for a future age of the Erd Tree wherein life and death live in dusky concert. Frenzied Flame. Unkillable but also unattended and forsaken beneath Miquella's stronghold, Godwyn's three fingers become consumed by the remnants of his wrath, generating a chaotic form of dragon fire called Frenzied Flame. If the Frenzied Flame fuses with the Elden Ring, the whole of the world will be ceaselessly scorched, so the three fingers remain buried to prevent absolute doom. Melina. Melina is the secret child of Godwyn and Ranni, and was given by her mother the task of identifying and aiding the prophesied Tarnished in the quest to vanquish all the shard bearers. In the shattering, reforge the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord, thus fulfilling both her parents' birthrights. Upon Melina finding said Tarnished, Ranni disguised as Snow Witch Rennala gives the Tarnished a ring that once belonged to Godwyn, allowing them to summon spirits to aid them in their quest. If the Tarnished that Melina guides embraces her father's wrath and binds the frenzied flame to the Elden Ring, she will task herself with killing the Lord of Chaos as recompense for her misguided abetance. In the end of all things. So, now to the player character, the prophesied Tarnished. After the breaking of the Elden Ring and Marika's disagreement with Radagon regarding it, it can be concluded that Marika regretted fusing body and soul with the Elden Lord and sought a new consort, or, alternatively, to be released from her bondage through the death of the fused cosmic dragon, Elden Beast, that their consciousnesses had together become. So Marika bestowed her grace through the Erd Tree on her potential suitors, all of whom were tarnished before the shattering, leaving them untouched by and therefore ideal for the task of restoring the broken order. The player character then follows the path of lost grace through the lands between to the Erd Tree, where they are confronted with the choices to do one of the 5 currently confirmed endings. The first is restore the Golden Order and become the new consort of Marika and the Greater Will, assuming the title of Elden Lord. The second is restore the Elden Ring in its entirety as Marika's new consort and usher in the Age of the Duskborn, returning death to the Order. The third is restore the Elden Ring with a new cursed rune and thereby curse every living thing, rendering the world without taboo. The fourth is assist Ranni in usurping Marika's godhood, becoming her consort and establishing a new order, initiating the Astral Millennium. And the last, and the baddest secret ending, but kind of the baddest assist thing to see is imbue the Elden Ring with the frenzied wrath of the three fingers, betraying and killing Marika entirely, scorching the world and assuming the eldritch title Lord of Frenzied Flame. Okay, so I didn't think about what it is that I wanted to say after I was done with this, so I'm just gonna spitball for a little bit. I think this story is really interesting. It's very reminiscent of Norse mythology. Like I said, there's a couple of things in here that are ambiguous, more ambiguous than I presented them as here. One specific thing that I thought of, I think I said I wasn't going to mention this, but I'm just going to do it anyway, is the idea that Morgott and Mohg, the cursed twins, the fell omens, are actually Marika and Godfrey's children. And I don't think that. It talks about how Morgott and Mohg were born deep underground, and so that led me to think maybe the the great gods and dragons that Marika, Radagon, Morgott and Mohg seem to be come from deep underground and somehow made their way up to the Erd Tree and converted it into this conduit for the Greater Will. Obviously, the story about Ranni and Godwyn's dalliance is, just headcanon, as is the theory about the 2 and 3 fingers. but I think that there's a lot of in-universe explanation for, or like stuff sort of leaning in that direction. The fact that it's Ranni who kills the two fingers seems to be seems to line up with the idea that she wanted to kill Godwyn both body and soul, and by doing that, like sort of like finalized her mission. The idea of Melina being their offspring. There's one interesting thing, right? That like it says in this document that like Ranni's body burned, and I do think that Melina is her and Godwyn's child, but like she's not fully constituted of a body. Maybe it was like prior to childbirth that Ranni was burned, and so Melina was entirely conceived in spirit, and like only can maintain a like physical form when in close proximity to the Erd tree. That's like an interesting potential idea, I think. There's a lot of other things, like earlier yesterday I watched a video about Gelmir and like the quest line there with Rikar's consort, and like there's a few things that I'm like, oh, like this is interesting information. I don't mention a lot of the battle at Gelmir because like I just don't know a lot about it, and so like it just doesn't get mentioned here. I know about the Land of the Giants. There's a lot of enemies in this game. You could ask the question like, what about the other dragons? Are they also like gods just like by default, even though they're easy to kill? Maybe, yeah, I don't know. But so there's like a lot of interesting things to still speculate on, and I hope that like just by having all this stuff in one place, even though it's mostly headcanon and like I don't have a lot of references to point directly to, that this might, you know, get the ball rolling in terms of talking about and thinking about lore. Anyway, like I said at the start of the video, I'm Buttercup, animator, illustrator, sequential artist, and author, and self-admitted lore-obsessed nerd. Thanks for watching this video, and let me know what you think down in the comments. Is there anything specific that like absolutely refutes any of the things that I said? Can you cite it despite my failure to do so in this video? I'd really appreciate it. Also, feel free to point me to any Reddit threads, YouTube videos, you know, or just like random pieces of lore that you happen to find, because, you know, this is just the beginning of people scouring the game to find information of this sort. And like, I'm really excited for where this all ends up. That's all from me. Thanks for watching.